He is not the biggest man on the battlefield. He doesn't wear the most expensive armor. He doesn't ride a horse. He doesn't command thousands. He commands 80 men who would walk into a burning building if he told them to. The emperor rules Rome. The general commands the army. But the centurion is the reason any of it actually works. He is the hinge between strategy and violence. The man who takes an order from above and turns it into something real on the ground. Remove every general from the Roman army. The legions keep fighting. Remove every centurion, and the greatest military machine in human history falls apart in an afternoon. So who was he? How did you earn that vine staff? And what did it cost to carry it? A legion contained roughly 59 centurions. Not one. 59. That number tells you everything about how Rome thought about command. The Romans did not believe in the myth of the lone genius general. They believed in distributed, layered, redundant command. Every century, 80 men had its own centurion. 6 centuries made a cohort. 10 cohorts made a legion. If a general went down, there was a legate. If the legate fell, there were 59 centurions. The system was designed to function even when the top of the chain was cut. At the very peak of the centurion structure sat the most important soldier in the entire Roman military below officer rank, the Primus Pilus, the first spear, senior centurion of the entire legion, commander of the first century, of the first cohort, the most experienced unit in the formation. The Primus Pilus was typically in his 40s, a soldier with 20 or more years behind him. He sat in on the general's war councils. His opinion mattered. When the legion moved, he was its institutional memory. Below him, a ranked hierarchy of 58 other centurions, each positioned by seniority and combat record. Not a flat hierarchy. A precision instrument with 59 cutting edges. This is where the centurion's story gets genuinely interesting. Because, unlike the legionary or the praetorian, there was no single path to the vine staff. The most common and most respected route. A soldier who distinguished himself through years of service, combat performance, and demonstrated leadership ability could be elevated to centurion. This was not fast, and it was not guaranteed. You could serve 15 years, survive 10 campaigns, kill more enemies than anyone could count, and still be passed over if the centurion above you didn't rate your command ability. Because killing well and leading well are different skills. The Romans understood this completely. A man who was exceptional in battle but couldn't manage 80 other men under pressure. He was valuable as a soldier. He was not centurion material. Wealthy or well-connected Romans could be appointed centurion directly, bypassing years of enlisted service. The Romans built in a correction mechanism, though. A directly appointed centurion who couldn't perform was identified fast, because failure in command meant men died, and that required answers. The battlefield has no patience for incompetence, regardless of family connections. Retiring praetorians could enter the legions directly as centurions. Given their superior training and experience, this was a recognized lateral entry. And some of the best field centurions of the later imperial period came exactly this way. Now let's talk about what set the centurion apart, physically, visually, tactically, because the Romans were not subtle about power. They made it visible. This was the centurion's defining symbol. Not his sword, not his rank insignia, a staff cut from a grapevine. It served 2 purposes. First, identification. In the chaos of battle, smoke, dust, screaming, the crashing of 5,000 men in close quarters, A soldier needed to locate his centurion instantly. The transverse crest on his helmet helped. The vine staff, held high, confirmed it. Second, discipline. The vitus was used to strike soldiers, not in anger, not randomly, as a tool of immediate correction in the field. A man breaking formation, the vitus across his shoulders. A man hesitating at the moment of charge, the vitus. One centurion documented by the historian Tacitus became so notorious for his constant use of the staff that his soldiers gave him a nickname, "Bring me another," because he wore them out. When his men finally killed him in the Teutoburg disaster, it's recorded that some of them felt he'd earned it. This was the balance the centurion had to walk every day. Hard enough to hold the line, not so hard that his own men turned on him. Every Roman soldier wore a helmet with a crest that ran front to back, the sagittal axis. The centurion's crest ran side to side the transverse axis. This single visual difference meant a soldier could identify his centurion's position in the battle line even at 30 meters, through the chaos, without making eye contact, in a formation where looking away from your immediate opponent for more than a second could kill you. This mattered enormously. Lower leg armor greaves were optional equipment for standard legionaries. Centurions wore them as standard. Combined with the transverse crest and the vine staff, every element of his appearance was designed to answer one question for the soldiers around him: where is my centurion? Here is the brutal reality of the centurion's tactical role. He fought at the front of his century, not behind it, not beside it, in front of it. This was standard positioning the centurion led from the front, on the right side of his unit's front rank. Think about what this means. He is the most valuable command asset in his section of the battle line, and the Romans deliberately placed him in the most dangerous position on that line. Why? Because the Romans had made a calculated decision: the value of a centurion physically present and visible to his men, leading, directing, demonstrating exactly what needed to happen, outweighed the risk of losing him. A centurion who commanded from the rear kept himself safer, but his men couldn't see him, and Roman soldiers needed to see their centurion. So he stood at the front, and he died at a rate that reflected that position. The casualty rates among centurions in major engagements were consistently higher than among standard legionaries. They died more because they were always where the dying was heaviest. His job in the actual mechanics of combat was precise: keep the line dressed, the spacing and alignment of the century's formation. Control the pace of advance, not too fast, not ragged. Identify and exploit breaks in the enemy line. Pull back and rotate fatigued front rank soldiers before they broke. Prevent any man from leaving his position. That last point, prevent any man from leaving his position, was enforced by the vine staff, by voice, and, if necessary, by physical force. A century that held its formation won. A century that broke, lost, and usually died. The centurion was the reason formations held when every human instinct was screaming at the men in them to run. The centurion existed in a specific and fascinating social position that had no real equivalent in any other ancient army. He was not an aristocrat. He came, in most cases, from the common people. He had no inherited wealth, no family connections to the Senate, and yet, a standard centurion earned roughly 15 times the pay of an ordinary legionary. The Primus Pilus, the senior centurion, earned approximately 60 times legionary pay. To put this plainly, if a common soldier earned enough to live, the Primus Pilus earned enough to invest, to own property, and to retire wealthy. After a full term of service, a centurion retired with enough capital to enter the equestrian class, the second tier of Roman aristocracy. Within a single generation, exceptional military performance could move a family from the farming class to the cusp of Roman nobility. This was not accidental. Rome needed its centurions desperately. The pay structure was designed to attract and retain exactly the kind of man who could carry the vine staff effectively. For 5 centuries it worked. 48 BC, Dyrrhachium, on the Adriatic coast. Julius Caesar is fighting Pompey. Caesar's forces are outnumbered, undersupplied, and holding a fortified line that is being attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. At one section of the wall, a critical redoubt, the attack breaks through. Caesar's men begin to collapse backward. A centurion named Sceva is at this section. What follows is documented by Caesar himself in his own account of the Civil War, which means we're reading the words of the man who was there. Sceva holds the position, not retreats, holds. His shield, by the end of the engagement, has been struck by 120 missiles. 120. He loses one eye to an arrow. He receives wounds in the shoulder and thigh. He does not move from the position. After the battle, Caesar personally promoted Sceva from centurion to Primus Pilus, jumping him straight to the senior rank of the entire legion. He received 160,000 sesterces in personal award. Caesar doesn't record whether the shield survived, but Sceva's name survived 2,000 years, because that is what a centurion was supposed to be, not the man who held the line when it was easy, the man who held it when nothing in the universe suggested he should. Tactical command capability distributed throughout the entire formation. No single point of command failure. Personal authority reinforced by physical presence, visual identification, and a systematic pay structure that attracted men of genuine ability. Institutional continuity centurions typically served longer and with more stability than the rotating political appointments. That filled senior officer roles. A legion centurions were its institutional memory. They knew the men, the terrain, the enemies, the supply situation. They outlasted the generals. The frontline positioning that made centurions so effective also made them priority targets. Germanic tribes, Parthian commanders, and Gallic chieftains all learned to aim for the transverse crest. Kill the centurion, and 80 men become a problem. Kill 3 centurions in adjacent centuries simultaneously, and a section of the Roman line could unravel faster than the system could compensate. The system had redundancies, but it happened. The second weakness was structural. The centurionate produced men who were exceptional at managing. 80 soldiers in a disciplined formation. It rarely asked them to think beyond that. That gap between brilliant tactical execution and strategic thinking contributed to some of the Roman army's worst defeats. When they faced commanders who operated at the level above the centurion system, the emperor was the face of Rome. The general was the mind. The legionary was the body. But the centurion was the spine. Without him, nothing above held upright. Without him, nothing below had direction. 59 of them in every legion, hundreds across the empire, almost none remembered by name. Sceva is the exception. Most held their centuries in obscure engagements. On the edges of the known world, Rhine, riverbanks, Syrian deserts, nameless hill forts in Britain. They held the line. They wore out their vine staffs, and they went back to their centuries the next morning. Next episode, we stay inside the Roman war machine. We're looking at the unit that made the Roman advance possible in the first place. The men who went out ahead of the formation into unseen territory and came back with the information that decided whether a battle was won before it started. Subscribe. Next one is coming.